So I call this meeting to order. Welcome, esteemed attendants and esteemed speakers. Today's debate will focus on the question or the argument on, is a university degree the worst investment a young person can make? I don't know if you have a preference for or against, but anyway, we'll measure that. Actually, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to vote as an audience to see where the audience stands on the issue. To remind you, the winners of the debate actually are not the ones getting the most votes, but actually getting the most change in preferences. So in your clicker, you will have 1 for the motion, for the argument or the motion, 2 against, and 3 if you're undecided. Let me repeat the motion. Is a university degree the worst investment a young person can make? Meaning if you're for it, meaning you believe it is a bad investment, or if you're against, it means you think it's a good investment actually, and you can be undecided, of course, and you can press 3. So right now, if we're ready, please take a vote on the argument. So here we are, 30% believes, actually it's for the argument, the university investment degree is a bad investment for a young person in today's world. 52% believe is against, believe in fact it's a good investment, and then finally 20%, 17% are undecided. So for both sides of the debate, all of them of course are your targets, but the 17% are definitely up for grabs. So we have 2 sides to this debate. For the motion, we have Maysa Jalbout, CEO of the Abdullah Al-Ghurair Foundation. I'm sorry, for against, since I started, against the motion, Maysa Jalbout, CEO of the Abdullah Al-Ghurair Foundation, and Professor Soulaymane Kachani, Vice Provost of Columbia University, obviously against the motion, one would imagine. And then for the motion, we have Jan-cayo Fiebeg, venture partner and co-founder of 3V Ventures and Coders Trusts, and Zaid, Rahman, founder and CEO of Volley.com. So we will begin with speaker for the motion. I understand, Cayo, you will be the first. You have 7 minutes in this first round.
Thank you, my honor. Wonderful. This is not working. Here we go. Fantastic. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm well aware that we're at an educational conference, and my partner and I are voting against the degree as an investment. So that's a very thin ice to get started with. But what I would like to appeal to you initially is that all of here in this room, we are the 1%. We are the ones that had the opportunity to come to a man-made island in a desert and have the resources and the time and the energy to talk about education, what we're truly passionate about. And both of us are representing the 99% that didn't have the opportunity to be heard, and that's our duty, as we believe. And I'm going to start with a number that is quite shocking in its amount. There are 1.5 million engineers graduating in India each year. And from those 1.5 million engineers, 80% of those are unemployable. 80%. And this is a larger number than countries. And the parents of the families of the kids are spending $20,000 for the education of the child, leaving them at the end unemployable. So again, it's not for the 1% of the Ivy Leagues that of course make their 3 digits and have 95% employment rates, and it's a beautiful investment, and I had the opportunity to be in one of those, but it's for the 99%. And myself, I studied in the UK, in Germany, in Denmark, in Canada, and in the States. And even in those countries, I saw such an imbalance of education, leaving my friends with a high debt. And just because I studied in Denmark, they paid me to study, actually, so I didn't have a debt. Then I could do what I wanted and was passionate about and started my company. And I moved to Bangladesh for 4 years. And I thought the most important part is to get people employed. I'm not particularly very passionate about education. I'm passionate about getting people to work. So at the end of the day, we built a system that created the largest employment online workforce in Bangladesh. And I looked at initially when I moved there and I said, shall we do a degree program? And yes, I'm a foreigner, so it's maybe I get some appeal because I'm a white person, attract people. But I wouldn't have moved the needle because I think the degree itself is categorized in a certificate at the end. What a person holds so dearly with a stamp of approval that has grades that are completely obsolete. Nobody can actually measure those grades. I have a GPA of 11.2 in Denmark. Doesn't tell you anything. My French friend has 14. What about the teachers themselves? I don't know, as an HR employer, if the teacher was qualified to provide the education to my future hire. And I also don't really know what was in the content that was taught. So what we have done, we thought, screw this. I don't want a certificate at the end. I want that my students are earning money. So what do I need to teach in order to do so? So we went to the online freelancing market that has beautiful statistics of right now the demand of jobs online. And then I took those and taught them. And I don't really care if my students are able to pronounce or even write HTML, as long as they provide the service and build a beautiful website and can earn money from those. And that's a beautiful part. We have taught not Ivy Leagues and high-level students. We taught the middle class and the lower middle class in 12, 13 countries. And they were able to earn money online because it doesn't matter where you're from, what religion you follow, what age or sex you are, as long as you can build a credential profile online. Because an American doesn't care and doesn't know what certificate or degree you have. You know, if it's Ivy League, if it's the Indian high-level universities, yes, but the rest, and that's 40,000 colleges in India and 4,000 universities, you have never heard about. So at the end of the day, it's that portfolio that is online of the work that you have delivered, where a person has paid for and gave you 5-star ratings. That is the important part. And that's why we would train 40,000 people and have 75% employment rate online of people that are coming from the lowest tiers, from the slums and from refugee camps. And I think that is very important. But what really frustrates me at the end of the day, we still hand out a degree, a certificate. And why is that? The kid, yes, makes a picture and gets his 100 Facebook likes, but at the end of the day, it's for the parents. Because the parents want to have that and show it around. And I truly believe that's for their best intent, but at the end of the day, that really doesn't move the needle. If the mindset of the parents are still in this scheme that we need to send my son and my daughter to the university, even though you exactly know that that university has 80% of the graduates are unemployed. You know that. It's just the last batch that comes out. 8 out of 10 are not getting a job, and still I'm sending my son and my daughter on this university, and that just cannot happen. This is not, and it's not their fault. It's just a mindset, because you take what you have learned from the parents, and it's the most appealing way, especially in emerging markets, to send your son and daughter to the university. I spent 3 years of my life to advocate in front of media, and spent $3 million in Bangladesh to advocate that you can actually earn money online. And it was just at the end when my first students actually got $100 out of an ATM. Then it popped up. And still, it's a long process. 165 million people, we have only trained 40,000. I don't understand why not everybody is doing that. I literally don't understand. So as a solution, it's easy just to criticize. I think as a solution, it is shorten the time of a 3-year program, just because there's such a rapid change of exponential technology coming. What you teach now is not valid in a year from now. The programming language, if you teach that, is obsolete by then. So it is shorter courses that are more driven by what the companies actually want, because also the one thing that we have to know, a university degree is to get a job. Everything else is a 1% problem that we want to be educated and sit in the Boston Tea Party and talk about enlightenment. But 99% of the people, they get a job to repay the $20,000 that the parents have spent and to feed the family. And then when you move up the Maslow pyramid, and after a few years, then you can think about the rest, right? But I think that is what most of the people in the world care about. And that's why shorter courses bring exponential technology. And we've seen what VR can do, what AI can do here. What about voice recognition? All of these things have to be implemented in the course. And at the end of the day, the mindset itself is required to change. Thank you very much.
Good. So now we'll hear the first speaker against the motion. Please, Maysa.
Let me start by asking you a question. Raise your hand if you had a university education. Okay. Let me ask you another question. If you have a son or a daughter, a niece or a nephew, or if you mentor a young person, would you advise them not to take a university education? Please raise your hand. Great. Fair. I really sympathize with my proponent's perspective on this. I'm actually a proponent of online learning. The foundation that I head up is actually an investor in online learning. But we see online learning and short-term credentials as a complement to a university education. I disagree that going to a university is simply about preparing you for your first job. University is about preparing you for life. It is there to prepare you to work, to think, to learn, to live harmoniously with other people, to be a good citizen. And I'm here to tell you 5 reasons why I support university education. My proponent is talking about the declining value of a university education. He's talking about poor quality education. And I understand that. I think everybody deserves a high quality university education. What we're concerned about is that some university degrees are not catching up with the times. But today, there's actually no evidence to prove that anything but a university education is going to set you on the ladder for the best future that you can have. When it was our parents' generation, the ladder started at ground zero. For our kids, the ladder starts at level 2. It starts with a university education. That is the minimum education they require. And let me tell you why. University education, the statistics say, will give you a better income. In the OECD, if you have a university degree, you get 56% more income than someone with a high school education. Over a lifetime, if you have a bachelor's degree, you are 84%. You are going to earn 84% more than someone without a university education. For each additional year of education, you are less likely to be poor by 9%. Those are some very powerful statistics. But like I said, I don't think education is just about income. It's also about having better employment prospects in a world that's changing very, very rapidly. What my proponent is talking about is preparing young people for jobs that exist today. But in reality, we don't know what jobs of the future look like. But let me tell you that in the United States, for example, that jobs are growing for those who hold a university degree, but declining for people who don't. If we just look at a short period between 2002 and 2012, jobs for people who have higher education grew from 36 million to 43.5 million, at the same time as jobs for people who don't have an education were in severe decline. Another very important fact is that people with higher education degrees have a higher share of the better jobs, of the better quality jobs, the better paying jobs. And that's to the tune of 70%. 70% of the best jobs go to people who have university educations, as in comparison to only 40% for those who have associate degrees. And finally, on this point of employment, if you want to look ahead, the prediction is that by 2020, 65% of all jobs in the United States alone will require a minimum of a bachelor degree. So how, do I ask you, can we actually recommend that young people not have a university education? Much of this conference today is talking about skills. And we're talking about how do we develop skills? Do we develop them in short-term courses? Do we develop them in university degrees? Do we develop them throughout life? I believe that it's all about lifelong learning. But the skills that you learn, that you start your life with in a 4-year degree are indispensable. Again, research shows that university graduates have better cognitive skills, literacy, numeracy, problem-solving skills. Also, university graduates have better non-cognitive skills that we are talking about, that we desperately need. And finally, 58%, or I should say, ironically, we talk about the need for the private sector to invest in graduates after they leave university. But the irony is that the private sector actually invests more in university degree holders, to the tune of 58%. 58% of training that happens in the private sector is going to those who have a university degree, which says something that's very important. When you graduate with a university degree, it's not just about getting your foot in the door. You are on a trajectory to continuously be able to invest in yourself and have others invest in you. It's not just about individual gain, though. I think we need to keep a larger perspective, the perspective of what is the return to society? What is the return to economy? And it's all well, when we talk about that not everyone needs a university education, whether it's people in developing countries or people that don't have access to quality education. I believe that everyone has the right to have a quality education. And it is about improving economic standing of entire countries. And the research shows that for every additional year, it's associated with 35% higher GDP of a country. Skilled individuals lift their countries from poverty. Countries that have high numbers of higher education degree holders have higher patents, have higher innovation, are the ones who are actually producing the kinds of solutions that we need to address some of the biggest challenges in the world. And finally, I want to talk about the impact on society. There is nowhere else in the world where a young person can go to spend time to become a better citizen. Universities are so much more than about preparing for jobs or developing cognitive skills. They're where you get exposed to ideas, where you debate like we are today, where you develop networks, where you think about your future, your purpose in life. It's where my proponents develop the idea that they are presenting here today. So ladies and gentlemen, a university education is not something that we can be doubting here today. We can think about how we can improve it, how we can make it more innovative, but we cannot allow this motion to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you for the speaker. So we will now hear the second speaker for the motion. Second speakers, we have 5 minutes each on each side, of course. Just go ahead.
Thank you very much. Quick clarification before I get started. I have 0 university experience, did not learn anything about life in a university setting because I did not go to one. So I like to think that all my arguments here are independent in many ways. So I think what's interesting here is it's seemingly a very polarizing debate. There's one side that believes that a university degree is totally not relevant. Another side is obsessed with this kind of like romantic idea of schooling versus learning. And if I look back at my own kind of like life, growing up, there was this common theme, I would like to say, that you needed a university degree to be successful in life. Let's understand what is education. It's such a arbitrary kind of like filler word with many ambiguous definitions. Is it to teach you the purpose of life? Is it to train you for jobs? Who knows? I think it's kind of like a complacency of the kind of like university propaganda machine that you need to go to the university to be successful in life, otherwise you will fail. That's a totalitarian view, right? Really, if you think about it, what my parents and teachers told me is that you go to school, you get good grades, you graduate to the next level, and repeat. Until then, you graduate to the next phase in life, which is, adulthood and the workforce. It's just very, very depressing to think of the world in those terms. So I would like to say that the purpose of university fits in this kind of like system, which is the education system, that it is a game. It is a competition. It is all about kind of like winning the game so that you can get a job, you can be successful in your careers, and ultimately you can find happiness. It's almost like if you don't go to university, you don't have any prosperity in life, which is, not a good argument to make at all. I would say that from my own experiences, if you go to the corporate world in the Fortune 500, you will find that most corporations don't care about a university degree. In fact, I will tell you that it is not part of the hiring rubric in the high-tech world, such as Google, in the financial services world, such as Goldman Sachs. It is not part of even agricultural companies like the Coke Industries. In fact, I would say that most corporations in the Fortune 500 to 1,000 are spinning out sort of any kind of like bias that is towards university graduates from specific universities. I know this because most of my customers are in the Fortune 500 world. And if you go to a corporation, they will tell you that they're actually very dissatisfied with the products most universities are producing. As an employer in Silicon Valley, I can tell you that actually I'm quite surprised when I speak to graduates of Ivy League universities. They seem to lack specialized knowledge and broad knowledge that is relevant to the work that we're doing. They lack skills such as leadership, communication, problem solving. There is a kind of like a lack in mindset towards learning every day and a growth mindset. And frankly, that brings me to my next argument, which is, I think, really the trump card here. Just like investing, universities and education follows a power law. Most corporations fail to return capital to their investors. Just like that, most universities fail to return the quality of education they're promising. So this is not an argument about the Stanfords and Harvards of the world. If you are lucky to be part of the 1% where you have the access, the privilege, the mindset, the foresight, the knowledge, and the access to capital, then great. But 99% of the world does not have that access. There's a very interesting data point here. Let me ask you a question. Which university do you think is owed the most amount of student debt? Harvard? Columbia?
Phoenix.
University of Phoenix, which is a for-profit organization, mostly online, that is owed many, many billions of dollars for an education that most students default on. In fact, according to Brookings, 70% of students who go through a 2-year program or a community college actually default on their student loans. That just speaks to the quality of the education they're receiving. So, to your point, yes, education quality is the main argument here, but from a data perspective, most universities, forgive me, suck. And so, to my point of Kaya's point, what was the statistic on the Indian engineering students? As an Indian, I can tell you that 80% of engineering students in India are actually probably not hireable by my own company. Because they are not trained in the problem-solving skills and the ability to learn that'll give you the ability to be ready for life and your career. So in conclusion, I would say is that don't be afraid to be don't conform to the world, and feel free to build your own path and imagine your own alternative to your life. Do not fall prey to the university propaganda machine. Thank you.
Thanks to the speaker for the motion. So the second speaker against the motion,
Thank you,
Professor
Mr.
Kachani.
Speaker. I would like to start by acknowledging my debating partner, Maysa, and also thanking Jan-cayo and Zaid, and most importantly, thanking all of you for taking the time today to join us for this very important discussion that is close to our hearts. I'd like to start by taking you back to last year's Global Education and Skills Forum, where one of the speakers, Sid Guru, shared with us that education should be about helping children live life expressively and also be always curious. And I would like to build on this thoughtful remark and state that universities are vital to making sure that young adults maintain curiosity and preparing them to have purposeful and expressive lives. As tempting as it might be to simplify a university degree and correlate a degree with a return on investment measured by salary, universities are not now, nor have ever been solely focused on preparing young students for the workforce. The institutional mission of most universities is to increase opportunity, is to cultivate creative understanding, to conduct innovative research and clinical practice, to contribute, and to have lasting impact on society. I would like to share two statistics with you. One is that more than 65% of the jobs of tomorrow by 2030 do not exist today. But more importantly, today's college graduates should expect between 50 to 20 job changes before they retire. 50 to 20 job changes. Young people need to develop a new set of skills to be effective in this new world. And education is the answer. Education is more than training students to push a button, perform a task, or fulfill a professional role. Instead, the goal of universities is to empower students to become independent and critical thinkers. Most universities today have interdisciplinary learning embedded in the curriculum to provide students with a more comprehensive understanding of the world beyond what any single discipline or path can offer. Students are typically required to have an in-depth knowledge of a major or concentration and then distribute their course electives across the humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, and applied sciences, and exposing students to the intersection of disciplines is essential to cultivating this capacity to be able to understand, but more importantly, to creatively respond to complex social problems. We are training problem solvers who will be responsible for addressing many of the global challenges that we are facing today and tomorrow. So I'll give as an example at Columbia, the core curriculum was established in the early part of the 20th century. It's one of the founding experiments of liberal arts education, and it remains vibrant as it enters its 10th decade. The habits of mind developed in the core are used by students many years after they leave college in the pursuit and fulfillment of meaningful lives. I would like also to add that research conducted at universities benefits everyone, creates industries, businesses, jobs. And as a professor, there is nothing more rewarding than working with curious minds and fostering an inclusive, immersive, social environment that is unparalleled, like Maysa mentioned, and that is there to prepare students for a lifelong of journey. And as a result, I'm not going to comment much on the dubious statistics and the anecdotes that Zaid mentioned, because they are absolutely not true and not scalable, I just want to contend with you that his main argument is that we need better quality university education. And what these guys are doing is helpful in shaking universities that do not want to change and do a better job of quality. So therefore, I believe that a university degree is one of the best, if not the best investment that young students can make. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll have now a bit less than 10 minutes for questions from the audience. I will ask for 4 questions, and I'll please ask you to identify yourselves and take less than 30 seconds or less to make the questions. If you want to direct the questions to one of the speakers, please do so. If not, it's okay as well. So can we pass microphones so that the lady?
Hi.
Well, you took it.
Oh, sorry.
Go on.
Oh, hi, my name is Khadija. I have a question to both parties. What exactly do you mean by quality education? I know that in discourses we throw a lot of adjectives, but I would like us to really define it and agree on what we mean by quality education and what education are we speaking about. Thank you.
Thank you. The lady on this side, please.
So I have a doctorate from Harvard. I've been a professor at Brandeis University for the past 9 years. And Brandeis University falls within the top 50 schools in America. I have a son in college and a daughter in a junior, so she's college shopping. And I'm fully against going higher education. And I disagree with both of your points. And I think you have to be a professor in a classroom these days to understand what's going on. There's no intellectual endeavor whatsoever what's going on in a college classroom. It's completely transactional. It's about getting grades. You can't talk to the students. You have to provide trigger warnings or they get upset because you've shaken their world up. You have to provide safe spaces where they're not rattled, because if you do, then you have administration coming down and breathing down your back.
Can I ask you what's the question, please?
I am. So I want to know, you've cited as statistics about 58% are getting a college, are being trained. And I'm not sure if you're looking at that statistics in a right way, because are they getting that because colleges aren't providing that?
Okay, thank you. The lady on this side, and then the gentleman here.
Thank you. My name is Sana Mandolini. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit working with women in conflict zones. But in this case, I'm talking to you as the mother of twins who are looking at college in America at about $70,000 apiece per year, which I think is pretty outrageous. So my question actually to both sides is that I'm sure Columbia is fabulous, but I really have doubts about $280,000 later. What exactly is that? At the same time, I absolutely cannot imagine my children not going to university and having that total experience, because I don't believe that we're all just being trained to come and have a job that you provide. I do think that understanding literature and history and all these other things are part of the education and maturity.
What's your
but
question?
so the question for me, which is interesting, is that why are we not actually addressing having free higher education, which used to be the case and is now disappearing from our lives, and in a sense make the case that we should be spending less on defense spending and putting more into higher education. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The gentleman on this side. Go on.
I'd like to take an opportunity to address the trades, the trade schools, the certifications. That stuff wasn't brought up. We know that in the U.S., 70% of our country doesn't have a college degree. So is there an opportunity for people to take a look at, and through the colleges, through the businesses, for them to take a look at investments more in those industries? Because, again, the lion's share are not going and they don't want to go.
Thank you. So both sides. Yes, you can. That's the point. Go on.
Disha and Alexandra, beautiful questions about quality education and why should we spend $70,000 per piece on this, and why is it not for free? And both of the arguments on the side is that education and university prepares you for life. Okay. Actually, I absolutely don't believe this, because you're sitting 3 years in a classroom with the exact same amount of people, 95% of the same race, of the same age, of the same beliefs, and the same thought, and the same cluster, and talking about theoretical aspects, while the life is changing, as we heard, very quickly. So $70,000, think about opportunity cost, what I can actually do with $70,000. With $70,000, I can travel around the world for 1 year, go to every country, and see the imbalance in education, see the most beautiful parts in the world, see what I can learn, what I can take with me. With $70,000 plus, I can start a company. I will probably fail, but what that does teach me, I can do a coding school, again for the $70,000, and earn $100,000 if I want to in 6 months, and I can do a few internships, all together. And then I'm looking at, it prepares you for life, and I think we should, everybody of us has that experience. I think we should just question sometimes that part, because it's what I got all of these parts because I was fortunate to travel. And then I was in Bangladesh and saw the injustice. And when I went home to Germany, I said, I've seen. So I cannot just continue being in my little pink bubble. And I think we are also in a beautiful pink bubble right now here on a palm in the desert. So I think we should go out again and think really, what's that about? And to the part about paying 70,000, the whole part why we started our company, our students are getting money to study. They don't pay us to study. The World Bank, the Rockefeller Foundation, other institutions are paying our students to study. Because I think even for free is not good enough. Because if free means the opportunity cost, and a person can still earn $5 by going on the local market. And then it's very hard to argue for the parents to not send them over there. So a person will get money to study. And there are a lot of really good coding schools that are coming up that are actually incentivizing it. And the repayment model is, once when I earn, I repay. And I think that's what we also say, because I truly believe in what I do, then I can also repay. Don't start a barrier at the beginning. That makes it very difficult for the people to enter, but rather get the majority in and then earn money at the end. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess I'm going to react to both Zaid's and Jan-cayo's propaganda, because I think the propaganda is coming from that side. So most major universities in the United States adopted over 10 years ago a need-blind admission at the undergraduate level. Over 25% of our undergraduate students go to Columbia for free, and their room and board is paid for. You seem to disagree, and I beg to disagree with you strongly. About a quarter of our students pay the full tuition, and the remainder of the students get financial aid based on the assets and salaries of the parents. On average, we collect less than half of the tuition. When you look at the full financial aid that we are providing to undergraduate students, we are actually, you can disagree, but I'm telling you this is the truth. We are collecting less than 50% of the tuition on our entire undergraduate population when you account for financial aid. And if not for our endowment and the generosity of our alums, we could not afford offering such generous financial aid packages. This is not to say that access to education should not be improved across universities and not just the elite universities. And this is not to say that more funding should not be poured into education instead of defense. So all of these arguments are valid. But I think what we don't want to do is to say the 99% go and do training and the 1% go to elite universities. Over 30% of our undergraduate students at Columbia are first-generation college students. I can share with you the statistics about underrepresented minorities. We have an extremely diverse group of students, so it is not true that our students all look the same. The number of undergraduate students who are international students is 20%. At the graduate level in engineering, it's 84% who are international. So in terms of educating a very diverse group of students, we are certainly doing that, but we can do more, and we always aspire to doing more. So I think that universities are engines of social mobility, and we should not say that the 99% should not go to those universities, because they have a right to.
If I may, thank you to the speaker. Would you like to? We have two questions that haven't been answered. One on what is quality education, if we were to define that, and the other one was on the trading schools, on whether they would be part of an equation of tertiary education, if you will, post-secondary. If both sides, either side, would like to take an answer to that, or propose an answer to that. Please, Mike.
I want to focus the discussion back on the motion that we're debating here. Is a university education the worst investment a young person can make? Nothing that was said in this chamber today should be mistaken for an agreement or for data that backs up that that is true. You did not hear it from my proponents at all. And I think that there's also a really important issue that we bring to the forefront for those who are saying that the quality of university degrees is such that what's happening inside the universities is so detrimental that we should do away with universities altogether. It's so risky. There is so much bad quality K-12 education around the world. How many of you would actually advocate we're doing away with schools all over the world? Why would you do that then for young people who so desperately need a university education to prepare them for the world that they're coming into? The return on investment on a university education is actually the highest when it comes to return in terms of income, if that's what the main concern is. And I hear that a lot. But I want to come back to the fact that it is so much more than about income. There was also points raised around other levels of education, other types of education. I don't think that university education is for everyone. It isn't. But it's not to say that it's not a good investment. We need very good quality vocational education. We need alternative methods of education. But what we're advocating here for today is that an undergraduate degree, a bachelor's degree, is an unparalleled investment.
Thank you, Maysa. In that case, let's take the sum-ups from both sides. So we'll have 3 minutes on each side for a summation of the argument and a conclusion. So would the side for the motion speak first, please?
Wonderful. Let me continue with my propaganda, or as I would say, being truly passionate about what we're doing. But what we would heard today is not that we're, on our sides, are saying, get rid of the universities. I think Columbia is doing an absolutely fantastic job, and if every university would be as Columbia, then I wouldn't be standing here. Then I would probably be a school teacher or a university teacher and didn't need to start my company. But I think the examples that were raised about the diversity in a class, yes, that comes because it's the 1%, it's the Ivy League who are going to make it to the corporate level, who can then give donations to the companies and the students who are then able to come. But end of the day, it's the 99% of the universities, end of the day, in the emerging markets, that honestly, because end of the day, that's our experience, their main belief and driver and goal is not really to educate the people. It is to exploit the parents for their income. Because end of the day, if you pay $20,000, it is. I mean, it truly is. It is when you spend $20,000. How can I be a dean and ask for $20,000 and 80% of my students are not graduating? Like, can I sleep at night? Because that is truly not an investment worthwhile taking. And I think this is what we're arguing about. And breaking these stigmas, that is required. So breaking it up into pieces that are actually able to address on the skills that are continuously changing, and I'm still don't understand as a notion that if I spend 3 years in a classroom and learn a skill that is at the beginning of my 3 years set because it needs to fit in a cluster of ECTS points in order to get my degree, and at the end of my 3rd year I'm going to learn something that is already obsolete, how is that going to prepare me to the future? As we heard in 2020, we don't know about the skills. So it's short-term courses that are directly lead and integrated with the market. And then with that, actually learn what does the market want, how does it react to, and being able to then adjust my teaching and my learning. So I think it's a heated discussion on both sides. I love the university. I learned a lot from it, but the last years that I spent in Bangladesh and trying to educate the people taught me so much by listening to actually the students. And the students were not satisfied. They came from the university and said, I don't know anything. They learned how to code on a piece of paper from a book from 1999. Like, this is the reality of the majority of the world. And that's what we're arguing against. So if you don't come up with a better solution for the 99%, then we need to use exponential technology, use the internet that is available, have the online classes in a more engaging way with peer groups in order to address them more closer to actually what the market wants. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think what we all need to remind ourselves is that our greatest challenge today when it comes to educating young people is providing them with the kind of education that's going to prepare them for challenges that we don't actually understand. So if we think about a university education, it's not just about preparing them for a job or equipping them with a skill that's going to go obsolete, or even preparing them to, or giving them a network. It's much more than that. The most fundamental thing a good quality university education should be able to do is to help young people to learn. Basically, to learn how to learn. Because they will need to reinvent themselves constantly. Unlike us, when we choose a career and maybe we've had 2 or 3 careers, they will have to have many, many careers. They will have to reinvent themselves. They will have to take many courses. They will need to continuously upgrade their skills so that they can be employed or can be entrepreneurs or be innovators or just simply be able to make a good living. That's what a good quality university education should do. I want to leave you with sort of 3 Ps that I think university education should give every young person. First, it should help them preserve their humanity. That's what a good quality education does. It provides them with the ability to study the arts, to contribute, to study literature, to contribute in a way that robots and technology is not going to be able to do. It's also about protecting our ethics, our standards, our understanding of what is acceptable and is not acceptable. Short-term courses that give you skills to equip you for a job, like Silicon Valley type courses, the ones that prepare you to do coding or anything like that, is not going to actually prepare a young person to think about what is right, what is wrong for humanity, for the things that we are so going to be struggling with going forward. So preserve, protect, empower. These young people are going to face so many changes. They're going to be in charge of so much more than we are today. So they need a university education to basically equip them to reach the potential that they have. Nowhere else can a young person today, in this context, have a better opportunity to develop those skills than in a university. Short-time courses and trainings are certainly part of lifelong learning. Young people need to be able to take courses on a regular basis, and they will have to. It will actually become second nature to them. Just like we read books today to improve our knowledge, they will need to take courses consistently to improve their skills. But a university education remains a powerful tool in the hands of a young person. And what you heard today is an argument for a motion that says it's the worst investment a young person can make. I ask you to vote against that motion. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And so it's now the audience turn to vote again. So to remind you, the motion is a university degree the worst investment a young person can make? If you're for it, you believe it is the worst investment. If you are against, number 2, it's not the worst investment. And number 3, you can be undecided, of course. So we have 10 seconds. And so for the motion, actually, well, interestingly enough, for the motion won 5% of the audience. Against the motion won 6% of the audience. So the balance remains as it was at the beginning, with a slightly greater gain from the argument against the motion. Thank you very much for attending. It was a very lively debate. Thanks to the speakers and for the audience to stay till the end. Have a great afternoon. Session is closed.